Patricia thought she had it all figured out. After 35 years as a school principal, she'd saved diligently, planned her retirement party, and even bought that dream RV. But 6 months into retirement, she was crying in her financial advisor's office, saying 5 words that haunt me to this day: I wish I had known. If you're approaching retirement or already retired, what I'm about to share could be the difference between your golden years being truly golden, or a financial and emotional nightmare you never saw coming. Here's a stat that'll shock you. 40% of retirees say they wish they could go back to work within the first 2 years of retirement. Not because they missed the work, but because they realized they made critical mistakes that could have been easily avoided. But here's what really gets me fired up. There's one mistake that 85% of retirees make in their first year that literally costs them an average of $47,000. Most people have no idea they're even making it. Did you catch it? We'll reveal exactly what this is later in this video. But first, today we're diving deep into the 10 things retirees desperately wish they knew before they handed in their 2 weeks notice. These aren't your typical save more money tips. These are the real, raw insights that come from interviewing hundreds of retirees and analyzing what separates those who thrive from those who merely survive. And number 7, it's going to completely change how you think about retirement. I've never shared this publicly before, but it involves a retirement strategy that most financial advisors won't tell you about because, well, you'll see. Let's jump right in. Meet Robert. For 30 years, when someone asked, "What do you do?" he had an answer: "I'm an engineer." Day 1 of retirement, silence. He literally didn't know how to introduce himself anymore. This might sound trivial, but stay with me because this impacts everything else we're going to talk about. Your career isn't just how you make money, it's how you see yourself. It's your daily structure, your social circle, your sense of purpose. When that disappears overnight, many retirees experience what psychologists call retirement syndrome: depression, anxiety, and a complete loss of direction. Research from the Harvard School of Public Health found that retirement increases the risk of depression by 40%. But here's the kicker: it's not because of money problems, it's because of identity problems. So ask yourself, who are you when you're not your job title? The retirees who thrive, they start building their post-career identity while they're still working. They develop hobbies, volunteer work, or side projects that give them purpose beyond their paycheck. Robert figured this out the hard way. 2 years into a miserable retirement, he started mentoring young engineers. Today, he tells me retirement is the best phase of his life, but only because he redefined who he was. Here's a number that makes even financial advisors sweat: $300,000. That's the average amount a healthy 65-year-old couple will spend on healthcare throughout retirement. Linda thought Medicare would cover everything. She'd worked for the government for 25 years. Surely her retirement benefits would handle any health issues, right? Wrong. Her first hospital stay cost her $15,000 out of pocket. Her medication, another $400 a month. She told me, "I spent more on healthcare in my first year of retirement than I did in the previous 5 years combined." Medicare covers about 80% of your healthcare costs. That missing 20%, it adds up to life-changing money. We're talking about prescription drugs, dental care, vision care, and long-term care, none of which Medicare fully covers. Quick question: do you know what a Medigap policy is? If you hesitated, you're already behind. Here's what successful retirees do differently. They research and purchase supplemental insurance before they need it. They also set up health savings accounts years before retirement. It's the only account that's triple tax advantaged for healthcare expenses. The bottom line: healthcare isn't just a retirement expense, it's potentially your biggest expense. Plan accordingly, or watch your savings evaporate faster than morning dew. This mistake alone costs retirees an average of $111,000 over their lifetime, yet 76% of people make it without realizing. David retired at 62 and immediately started collecting Social Security. Why wait, right? He was getting $1,800 a month. Not bad. But here's what David didn't realize. If he had waited until his full retirement age of 67, that same benefit would have been $2,400 a month. If he'd waited until 70, $2,976 a month. Let's do some quick math that'll make your head spin. Over a 20-year retirement, David's early filing cost him $283,200, nearly $300,000 left on the table because he was impatient. Now I get it. Maybe you're thinking, but what if I die before I collect all that money? Fair question. But here's the thing. Social Security isn't just about you. If you're married, your decision affects your spouse's benefits for the rest of their life. Here's something that'll blow your mind. For every year you delay Social Security past your full retirement age until age 70, your benefit increases by 8%. Show me any other investment that guarantees an 8% return with zero risk. The smartest retirees, they create a bridge strategy. They use other retirement funds to cover expenses between retirement and age 70, letting their Social Security benefits grow. It's like compound interest on steroids. All right, we've reached number 7. This is the one I warned you about earlier. The strategy most financial advisors won't share because, frankly, it threatens their business model. Before I reveal this, let me ask you something. Have you ever wondered why some retirees seem to have unlimited money while others are clipping coupons despite having similar savings? The answer isn't what you think. I discovered this completely by accident when I was interviewing Janet, a retired teacher. She was living in a beautiful home, traveling 3 times a year, and seemed financially stress-free. When I asked about her secret, she laughed and said, "I stopped trying to preserve my principal." Wait, what? This goes against everything we've been taught about retirement, right? Save money, don't touch the principal, live off the interest. But Janet had figured out something revolutionary. She had shifted from an accumulation mindset to a decumulation mindset. Instead of trying to die with the most money, she focused on optimizing her money for living. She used a strategy called total return investing, combined with a systematic withdrawal plan. Here's the genius part. Instead of limiting herself to dividends and interest, which might be 2 to 3% per year, she allowed herself to sell small portions of her investments each year. This gave her access to 4 to 5% of her portfolio annually, sometimes more. The financial industry doesn't promote this because they make money by keeping your assets under management. The longer you preserve your principal, the longer they collect their fees. Studies show that retirees who embrace strategic accumulation often end up with more money at the end of their lives, not less. Why? Because they're not sitting on piles of conservative, low-yield investment. They can afford to take appropriate risks because they're not paralyzed by the fear of touching their principal. So ask yourself, are you planning to be the richest person in the graveyard? Or do you want to actually enjoy the money you worked so hard to save? Picture this. You retire with $4,000 a month in expenses. Sounds reasonable, right? Fast forward 20 years and you'll need $7,200 a month to buy the exact same things. That's inflation, and it's retirement's silent killer. Tom retired in 2000 with what he thought was plenty of money. His groceries cost $150 a week, gas was 150 cents a gallon, and his property taxes were manageable. Today, that same grocery bill is $275 a week. Gas has more than doubled. His property taxes have tripled. At just 3% annual inflation, which is actually modest, your purchasing power gets cut in half every 23 years. Most people retire around 65 and live to 85 or beyond. That's 20 plus years of your money becoming worth less and less. Here's a question that keeps financial planners up at night. What if inflation spikes like it did in the 1970s when it hit 14% annually? Smart retirees build inflation hedges into their portfolios. They don't just buy bonds and CDs. They invest in assets that typically rise with inflation. Real estate, stock, treasury inflation-protected securities, and even commodities. The biggest mistake? Thinking retirement means safe investment. Safe from volatility? Maybe. Safe from inflation? Absolutely not. Sometimes the riskiest thing you can do is play it too safe. We're halfway through our list, and if you're feeling a little overwhelmed, that's normal. But here's the thing. Knowledge is power, and every single one of these insights could save you thousands of dollars and years of regret. And we haven't even gotten to the big one yet. Remember that $47,000 mistake I mentioned at the beginning? The one that 85% of retirees make in their first year? We're getting closer to revealing exactly what that is. But first, let's talk about something that affects your daily happiness more than your bank account balance. Divorce rates spike by 25% in the first 2 years of retirement. Let that sink in for a moment. Susan and Bill had been married for 35 years. They thought retirement would be their time to finally enjoy each other's company. Instead, they were driving each other crazy within 6 months. Susan told me, "I married him for better or worse, but not for lunch every single day." Here's what nobody prepares you for. When you retire, you don't just change your financial situation. You completely disrupt the relationship dynamics you've built over decades. Suddenly, you're both home all the time. You have different ideas about how to spend your days. One person might want adventure, while the other wants to relax. The spouse who handled the finances during working years might struggle to give up control. The list goes on. Research from Cornell University found that couples who don't discuss their retirement expectations in detail before retiring have a 40% higher chance of experiencing significant relationship stress. Successful retiring couples do 3 things differently. First, they have explicit conversations about their retirement vision, not just finances, lifestyle, daily routines, individual goals, and shared dreams. Second, they maintain some independence. They don't assume they'll do everything together just because they're both retired. Third, they gradually transition into retirement when possible, rather than going from full-time work to zero work overnight. If you're married or in a long-term relationship, here's your homework. Have the retirement conversation this week. Don't assume you're on the same page just because you've been together for years. The stakes are too high. Your house could be sabotaging your retirement, and you might not even realize it. Carol and Jim own their dream home, 4,000 square feet, beautiful garden, perfect for hosting their kids and grandchildren. But in retirement, their property taxes were $18,000 a year, utilities were $400 a month, and maintenance costs were eating them alive. They were house rich and cash poor. Here's the trap. Your house might be your largest asset, but it's also potentially your largest expense. Those mortgage payments might be gone, but property taxes, insurance, utilities, and maintenance never stop. In fact, they usually increase. Let's say your house is worth $500,000 and your total housing expenses are $24,000 a year. That's like having $600,000 invested at 4% just to cover your housing costs. Is that the best use of $500,000 in retirement? Smart retirees consider their options. Option 1, downsize strategically. Move to a smaller home or a lower cost area. This frees up capital and reduces expenses. Option 2, consider a reverse mortgage if you want to stay put but need more cash flow. Option 3, relocate to a retirement-friendly state. Some states have no income tax, lower property taxes, or better healthcare costs. I get it, your home has emotional value. It's where you raised your kids, where you have memories. But here's a tough love moment. You can't eat equity, and you can't pay for healthcare with sentimental value. Ask yourself, is this house serving my retirement goals, or am I serving the house? The answer might surprise you. Medicare enrollment mistakes can cost you thousands of dollars in penalties that last for the rest of your life. Frank thought he was being smart. He had great employer health insurance, so when he turned 65, he figured he'd delay Medicare enrollment and stick with what he knew. Big mistake. When he finally enrolled, 18 months later, his Medicare Part B premium had a permanent 36% penalty. That's an extra $1,800 per year for the rest of his life. Medicare isn't one program. It's actually 4 different parts, plus supplemental options, plus prescription drug coverage, plus Medicare Advantage plans. The combinations are mind-numbing, and the enrollment rules are unforgiving. You have a 7-month window around your 65th birthday to enroll. Miss it, and you could face permanent premium penalties, gaps in coverage, and limited plan options. Here's something that'll shock you. Even if you're still working and have employer insurance, you might still need to enroll in Medicare. The rules depend on your company size, your spouse's age, and other factors. Successful Medicare navigation requires 3 steps. First, understand your timeline. Start researching at least 6 months before you turn 65. Second, inventory your current healthcare needs. What doctors do you see? What medications do you take? This affects which plans make sense. Third, consider hiring a Medicare specialist. Yes, it costs money upfront, but it can save you thousands in the long run. Remember, you'll likely be on Medicare for 20 plus years. Getting it right from the start isn't just about money. It's about your health and peace of mind. Most retirees have accidentally built themselves a tax time bomb, and it's set to explode in their 70s. Meet Richard. He did everything right. Maximized his 401k contributions for 30 years, never touched his retirement accounts early, followed all the traditional advice. But at age 72, he was forced to take required minimum distributions that pushed him into a higher tax bracket than when he was working. His tax-deferred savings had become a tax nightmare. Here's the issue. Most retirement advice focuses on getting tax deductions today by contributing to traditional 401ks and IRAs. But this creates a massive pile of money that the IRS will eventually force you to withdraw and pay taxes on, whether you need the money or not. Think about this. You spent decades deferring taxes, assuming you'd be in a lower tax bracket in retirement. But what if taxes go up? What if your deductions disappear? What if you're actually in a higher bracket? Starting at age 73, you must withdraw a percentage of your traditional retirement accounts each year. These withdrawals count as ordinary income, potentially pushing you into higher tax brackets, making your Social Security benefits taxable, increasing your Medicare premiums, and affecting your ability to do tax-efficient estate planning. Sophisticated retirees use something called tax diversification. They don't put all their retirement money in tax-deferred accounts. They balance traditional 401ks and IRAs, Roth accounts, and taxable investment accounts. Here's a strategy most people miss. In the years between retirement and age 73, you might have lower income. This creates a window to convert some traditional IRA money to Roth IRAs at lower tax rate. Ask your financial advisor, what's my tax diversification strategy? If they look confused, you might need a new advisor. All right, it's time. Remember that $47,000 mistake I mentioned at the beginning? The one that 85% of retirees make in their first year? Here it is, and it's probably not what you're expecting. The mistake is maintaining the same spending habits they had while working without adjusting for retirement reality. I know what you're thinking. That's it? Spending too much money? But stay with me, because this is deeper than it sounds. Here's what happens. You retire, you get your first Social Security check. Maybe you start drawing from your 401k. The money is coming in, but you keep living like you always did. You don't realize that you're slowly eroding your financial foundation because the erosion is invisible at first. This mistake shows up in predictable ways. Not downsizing expenses when income drops, treating retirement accounts like checking accounts, helping adult children financially without adjusting your budget, making large purchases without considering the long-term impact, and not tracking spending because there's always been enough money. Here's why this costs $47,000. It's not just the overspending in year one, it's the compounding effect of starting retirement with bad financial habit. That extra $3,000 you spent in year one, over 20 years with lost investment growth, it becomes much more. But here's the real kicker. This isn't actually about money management, it's about identity management. You're spending like you're still earning because you haven't psychologically transitioned to being retired. The solution isn't just budgeting, it's consciously designing your retirement lifestyle. Successful retirees don't just retire from something, they retire to something. They have a plan for how they want to live, not just how they want to spend. The number one thing retirees wish they knew: retirement isn't about not working, it's about finding your next purpose. Let me tell you about George. Successful executive, great retirement savings, beautiful home. 6 months into retirement, his wife found him crying at the kitchen table. When she she asked what was wrong, he said, "I don't matter anymore. Nobody needs me. I don't know why I get up in the morning." This hits everyone differently, but it hits almost everyone. After decades of having clear purpose, structure, and identity through work, retirement can feel like stepping into a void. Here's a sobering fact. The suicide rate among men increases by 30% after retirement. For women, rates of depression and anxiety spike significantly in the first 2 years of retirement. We've been sold a myth about retirement being about relaxation and leisure, but humans need purpose. We need to feel useful, challenged, connected to something bigger than ourselves. Retirees who thrive find their purpose through 4 pillars. Growth, they continue learning and challenging themselves. Connection, they maintain and build relationship. Contribution, they find ways to give back and help others. Creation, they work on projects that express their creativity or expertise. This might look like mentoring young professionals in your field, volunteering for causes you care about, starting a small business or consulting practice, learning new skills or pursuing hobbies seriously, or writing, creating art, or building something meaningful. Here's your challenge. Before you retire, answer this question. What will give my life meaning when work no longer does? If you can't answer that clearly, you're not ready to retire, regardless of how much money you have saved. Let's bring this all together. We've covered 10 critical insights that separate retirement success from retirement struggle. The identity crisis, the healthcare shock, the social security timing mistake, the secret financial strategy, the inflation threat, the relationship challenges, the housing trap, the Medicare maze, the tax bomb, the overspending pattern, and the purpose vacuum. But here's the meta insight that ties everything together. Successful retirement isn't about having all the money in the world. It's about having clarity, intentionality, and adaptability. Every retiree I've interviewed who describes retirement as the best years of my life has 3 things in common. First, they prepared psychologically, not just financially. They thought about identity, relationships, and purpose before they stopped working. Second, they remained flexible and willing to learn. They didn't assume they had all the answers just because they'd been successful in their careers. Third, they took action on what they learned. They didn't just consume information. They implemented strategies, had difficult conversations, and made necessary changes. Remember Patricia from the beginning of our video? The school principal who was crying in her financial advisor's office? I have an update on her story.